Welcome, everybody, to our work session, the Ocean Township Board of Education. Just give me a minute to get this agenda. Okay. And roll was taken. Mr. Hastings, would you like to take it again since we had a few changes?
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Beal?
Here.
Ms. Hayes?
Present.
Mr. McCarthy? Here. Mrs. McGovern? Mrs. Parlamas?
Here.
Mrs. Talarico?
Here.
Mrs. Tortorella?
Here.
Mr. Weinstein? Here. Mrs. Gilman?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll begin with my president's report. There's my mic. I had the pleasure of attending the last two open houses back to school at TOIS, and I'd like to congratulate the administration and staff for a very well-organized educational evening for all. It was especially enjoyable to see all the clubs manned by the students in the library, the media center, and they had excellent displays and the students were very enthusiastic. So congratulations to all schools, all administrators, all staffs for very successful open houses. I think that they were enjoyed by everyone and I could feel great enthusiasm at each one that I attended. So great job for all of our administrators. Today I had the pleasure of attending the inauguration of our esports grand opening at the high school, the ribbon cutting for what can only be described as an incredible 21st century innovation. And to see the students getting ready to compete against other districts in what can only be described as incredible gaming, problem solving, supporting of each other. It was very, very impressive. There were parents, there were guests. The students were very happy to be engaged with this, and the program is only going to continue to grow. At the intermediate school, we had the pleasure of watching them actually beat Thompson Middle School, and there was a great roar coming from the room when the students won. I was so glad to see that parents and siblings were able to attend both situations, and it really was a milestone for our district. I'd like to thank all of the sponsors, including Cisco and Camp David, who's going to be supplying our uniforms for the competitors, for the gamers, and I can't wait to see them continue to progress. Finally, as I was leaving the intermediate school, I could see the people hard at work on the curtain wall, and the intermediate school is looking great. So I know that initially that money was, it's hard to okay a large amount of money and know that it's just going to be on a curtain wall. But then when you see the intermediate school and you see the results and you see them working through terrible weather that they've had, I can only say congratulations to all of the workers at the intermediate school because it looks fantastic. And that is my president's report. I'm going to turn that over now to Ms. Weldon.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I have a couple of things to report tonight. I was very excited to announce, and hopefully by now you've heard it, but the Ocean Township High School has won the AP, was named to the AP School Honor Roll and also won the AP Access Award. The AP School Honor Roll is recognizes schools whose AP program is delivering results and broadening access for students and increasing a college-going culture, providing opportunities for students to earn college credit and maximizing college readiness. And OTHS won the Access Award. The Access Award honors schools that encourage more low-income and underrepresented minority students to take AP courses. The Ocean Township faculty has long worked towards goals such as these, and I think everyone involved, from the AP students, the AP teachers, the supervisors, the guidance counselors, and the principal who make this happen, deserve the kudos for that great honor. So we're very proud of them. Also wanted to say that TOIS is moving their PTA meeting for tomorrow till 6 p.m. They also have a special presentation Project Guardian, presented by Homeland Security Investigations. They are moving all of that up to 6 o'clock, PTA meeting 6:15 presentation. That is at the TOIS cafeteria. They're doing that to not conflict with other community events that are taking place, but that's an update to the time for tomorrow. And also, Ocean Township High School is having their Share the Keys event tomorrow night as well. And that's a program that all parents need to attend if students are going to drive to school and park on school grounds. So that's an important presentation as well for the families that impacts. That concludes my report this evening. I want to save time to welcome Dr. Kalisha Morgan, who's going to give a full report on our assessment results for the NJSLA, DLM, and SAT. Welcome, Dr. Morgan.
Good evening, President Gilman, Board of Education members, Superintendent Weltman, and the public. Welcome you to the assessment results presentation for the 22-23 school year. Next slide, please. I will be discussing the NJSLA, the dynamic learning maps, and the SAT. The New Jersey student learning assessments are assessments used to measure the knowledge, concepts, and skills identified for each grade level in 3 through 11, per the New Jersey student learning standards for English language arts, mathematics, and science. Next slide, please. This slide shows the participation rate for our English language arts for grades 3 through 9. We had less students who tested this year from last year. We had 1,545 students who tested in ELA this school year. Next slide, please. What you see before you is the New Jersey's NJSLA, math participation rate. We had 1,585 students participate in the math NJSLA for the 22-23 school year. As you can see, Algebra 1, we have 2 scores because they are tested during the semester. So that's fall semester plus spring semester will give you the total. So that is for Algebra 1 and geometry. There were less than 10 students in Algebra 2, so their scores would not be presented here this evening.
Excuse me, Mr. Weinstein, you want to ask that question now?
It's about the data itself here. So I guess the thing I'm a little confused about, should it be based on the percentages of the number of kids that are in that grade versus the actual aggregate number? So the number went down. Does that mean that the percent, I'm trying to figure out, is it percent of kids that should we be more concerned about the percent of kids that actually went through the program and took it as opposed to the aggregate number? So if there were less kids and there are less people taking it, the percents can actually be higher based on the number of kids that are available, right? I mean, it just doesn't make the math doesn't make sense to me.
The participation math?
Yeah, because it's about percentages, not about aggregate numbers, right?
We were just highlighting the number of students who participated. We can get you the percentages, but I believe it was more than 95% who participated in the NJSLA.
Yeah, but I mean, what I mean is that it's the percent increase
Mhm.
and the percent decrease as opposed to the aggregate number increase. The aggregate number decrease doesn't. I don't know if it's same. So
Right. So that might be
unless you
additional.
basically said, well, all the kids that were here last year were here this year, right?
So one of the requirements of the NJDOE is that we report participation in these numbers.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for additional information, we certainly can get that for you.
Well, that's the meaningful number, isn't it?
Well,
Well,
it depends because this number is required by the NJDOE. We understand what you're saying, but we do also have to report this slide this way
Okay.
for CUSAC purposes. But if you would like this additional information, which we understand where you're coming from and asking for it, we could.
Yeah, well, I'm not
together.
saying whether I like to have it or not. It just seems that that's to be the relevant information to determine how the program is going, right?
Not according to the DOE.
Well, the participation is just the number of students who
Mhm.
take the tests
That's all they want to know.
on this one
Yes,
slide. But
The next-
On this one slide.
On that one
Okay.
slide, they just want to know how many students participated in the test. So we are following the template sent forth, given to us by the NJDOE.
And
Thank
then
you.
we add to it based on local
Right.
questions that we receive over years and information we want, but there are certain slides we
must
we
present.
give all of the NJDOE slides and then we enhance.
Yes.
So
For ourselves.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, I guess the bigger question I had was, it's hard for me to understand how you draw a conclusion if we don't have the right numbers. That was my fundamental question, is how do you draw a conclusion if you don't have if you're not evaluating the correct numbers?
about participation or
Sure,
about
and
performance?
either
Because
one.
later in performance, we do talk about percentage.
Right,
in
you talk about
percentages.
percentage, right?
So we draw conclusions about performance based on the percentages, but
Okay.
if you're asking how we draw conclusions about the participation.
Yeah.
I mean, it aligns with, and I
Okay.
don't want to speak for Dr. Morgan because she created this presentation this year, but in the past, I would look to see if these numbers aligned with our enrollment.
Right.
Okay. Okay, cool.
And they do.
And they do.
And
Okay.
thank you. Next slide, please. And here we have the science participation rate. Next slide, please. The NJSLA, the student's performance is a categorical level defined by the student's overall scale score. A student's performance is categorized into the performance levels of exceeded expectations, which is a level 5, level 4, met expectations, level 3, approached expectations, level 2, partially met expectations, and level 1 did not yet meet expectations. Next slide, please. And for science, there are 4 performance levels: level 4, advanced proficiency, level 3, proficient, level 2, near proficiency, and level 1, below proficiency. English language arts data. Next slide, please. And here are the performance levels for English language arts in grades 3 through 9. These are the percentages. So again, level 1, we compare our district to the state. Level 2, level 3, level 4, and level 5. The blue is Ocean Township and the black is the state. Next slide, please. This slide compares Ocean's percentage of students who met or exceeded the expectations and the number of students who met or exceeded the expectations in New Jersey. The blue numbers are Ocean Township and the black numbers are New Jersey. Students across the state.
Do you want us to ask you questions as you're going or at the end?
I would prefer we can wait until the end.
No problem.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Please write them down though, so you won't forget.
Totally.
Next slide, please. We also compare our individual schools to the state and to the district. So we have OTES, these are elementary schools for ELA, Wanamasa, and Wayside. The district average was a 59 for grade 3, and the district average for grade 4 was a 67. As you can see in green, the state average was a 42 and a 46. So all of our schools were above the state average. Next slide, please. Our math data. Again, here are performance levels for math grades 3 through 8 and students enrolled in Algebra 1 and Geometry. Ocean Township in blue. The state is in black, I'm sorry. Please keep in mind that most of our 8th grade students participate in Algebra 1, so that 8th grade score is not the outcome for the entire 8th grade class, because many of them were taking Algebra 1. And some have even taken geometry.
8th graders?
No, I'm sorry. I was thinking 9th graders. Next slide, please. Here's our comparison for met expectations and exceeded expectations. Again, Ocean Township in blue, the state is in black. Most of our grades exceeded the state average. Grades 6 and 7 came very close. And we do have strategies in place to remediate that. Next slide, please. Here are our individual schools in math for elementary schools and how they compare to the district and the state average. Once again, all of our schools in elementary met the state average. Next slide, please. Here are our scores for Algebra 1. For TOIS, 87% of our eighth graders met or exceeded the state average. Ocean Township High School, 13%. The state average was 35%. Our science scores. Level 1 through 5, or level 1 through 4, I'm sorry, there's only 4 levels for science. Next slide, please. And here are our students compared to the state. Next slide, please. Now we will show the subgroup performance. If a subgroup is not shown, that means that there were less than 10 students that were assessed. Our subgroups are female, male, Hispanic, Asian, Black, white, 2 or more races, economic disadvantage, students with disabilities, multilingual learners, and then our total population. These are in percentages. And this is for English language arts. And these are the number of students, the percentage of students who met or exceeded the expectations in their various subgroups. Next slide, please. Subgroups again in math. Total population was 42. I believe that's a 42. Yes, that was 42. And for science, next slide, please. Subgroups again. Students who met or exceeded the expectations. Next slide, please. So looking at the data, we recognize that there are specific areas of focus. There were certain groups that did not meet the state average. So we really want to focus on OTES for NJSLA English Language Arts, grade 6 English Language Arts, math for grade 7, math for grade 8, Algebra 1 for grade 9, and grade 11 science. And again, our overall subgroup performance was below state averages for our Black students, our special education students, our English language learners, and our economically disadvantaged. As we move along to the next slides, I will discuss the plans that we have put in place to remediate these issues. We also want to celebrate. There were various gains throughout the district that we are very proud of. Ocean Township Elementary School grade 3 performance on the NJSLA, very, very good. Wanamassa School, grade 3 and 4 performance on the NJSLA ELA. Wayside School, grades 3 and 4 performance on the NJSLA math. I want to go back to Ocean Township Elementary School, that was NJSLA math. The TOIS performance on Algebra 1. The Ocean Township High School grade 9 performance on NJSLA ELA. And the Ocean Township's SAT mean score was above the state and the total group. So those needs to be celebrated. Dynamic learning maps. The DLM is an alternate assessment designed for students to whom general education assessments, even with accommodations, are not appropriate. So these students, based on their cognitive disabilities, are not able to sit for the NJSLA. The performance categories for the DLM: emerging, approaching the target, at target, and advanced. Next slide, please. There were 25 students, including 14 out-of-district students who participated in the DLM assessment. Students from grades 3 through 8 and 11 participated. Every grade level has less than 10 students, therefore, we cannot report the scores by grade level, and the graph shows district-wide performance. Next slide, please. So as you can see, we have our science in orange, math in dark blue, and ELA in light blue, and that's red, I'm sorry. So for our emerging students for ELA, we have 52% that were emerging, 28% approaching, 20 at target, and there was 0 advanced. For math, we have 56% emerging, 20% approaching, 20% at target, 4% advanced, and for science, 90% emerging, 10% approaching. Next slide, please. The SAT. The SAT is a standardized test widely used for college admissions in the United States. It is produced by College Board and is intended to assess college readiness. Students can earn between 200 to 800 points on each section. The evidence-based reading and writing and mathematics for a total score ranging from 400 to 1,600. Next slide, please. The SAT focuses on key content areas, words and context, math that matters most, command of evidence, problems grounded in real-world context, U.S. founding documents and the great global conversation, analysis in science and in history and social studies, and analyzing a source. Next slide, please. So here are our scores for the class of 2023. The overall score. Got it. I'm sorry. 10, is that 10? I'm sorry, I can't see this far. 1086, and mine is very small. 1086, correct? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes. Can I just
Tell I'm getting older. All right, our ERW score is 531 and our math score is 535, and we've exceeded the state of New Jersey as well as the total group of all students taking the SAT in the nation. Ocean Township exceeded those scores. Congratulations to our class of 2023. Next slide, please. And here's the 5-year comparison. As you can see, we did dip a little bit, but I think that was across the nation. Many students are no longer taking the SAT to get into college, so we probably don't have as many students, and their scores are probably not. I can't really tell you why, but I'm assuming that we are not testing as many students as possible, and we are still dealing with unfinished learning, but we are happy to see that Ocean Township is still exceeding the state level as well as the national level. Next slide, please. So how will we use all of this data? The administrative teams review the data and coach teachers how to review their own data. Our teachers look for areas in need of improvement and begin to formulate a plan to target instruction to the students' needs. And our coaches, as well as our supervisors, help them with this. The data helps us determine professional development activities, curriculum development, and intervention services. Our data meetings, intervention and referral services meetings, as well as lesson plans, will use this assessment data to address individual student learning needs and academic goals. Our overall goal is to improve learning performance across all areas through proactive actions. Next slide, please. So some of those proactive actions that we have already implemented, we will continue to focus On writing, writing instruction will include modeling, guided practice, and independent application. The DDICM grant, the Data Driven Instructional Coaching Model Grant, we are in year 3 of 4 years. Continue implementation of a data-driven instructional coaching model to improve teaching practices and outcomes for students with or at risk for reading disabilities in grades K-3. We will also utilize the data to drive instruction, as well as continue to include our multilingual learners in the general education experience. Next slide, please. For grades 6 through 12, we implemented DIBELS in grades 6 through 8 so that we can assess students who may have reading difficulty. So we are using DIBELS as a universal screener in grades 6 through 8, and that is new this year. Interventionists are being trained through IMSE in addressing deficits in morphology, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. We also implemented an ELA enrichment course for our targeted 9th grade students. And we will continue to review evidence-based statements so that the teachers will see which skills students perform well on and which skills require more attention. Next slide, please. Math next steps for grades K through 5. Our K through 5 supervisor will continue to work with teachers in implementing the curriculum companions. We will also integrate differentiated learning opportunities based on our formative assessments. We will continue to adhere to 40+40 learning period, while half of the period allow students to work at their own pace and receive differentiated instruction. And then we'll target homework assignments to be more meaningful and supportive. Math next steps for grades 6 through 12. Grade 9 Algebra 1 intervention is a new pilot started this year. Implementation of a push-in model for intervention for grades 6 through 8. Utilization of the IXL diagnostic snapshot. What this means is that we did not use the Linkit Form A. We are using the IXL diagnostic snapshot, and this change will immediately provide actionable data to close the achievement gap that exists within our subgroups. It will be administered 3 times a year, and a post-administration meeting will be held with the teacher and the supervisor, as well as students on next steps. And we will continue to use data to drive instruction. And these are just some of the intervention services that we have here in Ocean Township. We have tiered intervention. I'm not going to read all of them, but we have gifted and talented, our portfolio courses, mentoring programs, and many other options so that students can be successful. Next slide, please. I would like to thank the wonderful teachers of Ocean Township. I really came in and looked at the data, and I could see that there's progress being made. I also would like to thank our leadership team for their support. I don't think that we could have gotten here without you, your innovative ideas, as well as working with our wonderful students. Thank you.
Any questions for Dr. Morgan? That was a wonderful presentation, very concise. Ms. Tortorella.
Thank you for the presentation. Just a quick question. 2021, it looked like the scores SAT scores nationwide and state and district peaked.
Mhm.
Refresh my memory. Was the test administered differently that year because of COVID? Was it online?
No,
From
it
home?
wasn't
No?
online, but I would think that there were less students taking it.
Okay,
No, but it was not online.
okay. Remember. Okay, thank you.
Mr. McCarthy?
Total group? I'm sorry, what does that mean?
That means all of our students who took.
So that's all of Ocean Township?
For the SAT is what you mean?
Yes, I apologize. I'm referring to the SAT scores.
Total group is everyone who took the test in the nation,
Oh, the nation.
and then New Jersey, and then Ocean Township.
Total group in blue is the national score.
The
Red,
national score.
red is the state, and then OTHS is the dark.
Yes, the
blue.
dark.
Thank you. I appreciate that
You're welcome.
clarification.
Yes, Ms. Parlavas.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I do have a question. You mentioned if you could just clarify, the IXL diagnostic snapshot is being used in grades 6 through 12 only, as opposed to the Linkit
Linkit Form A.
Form A.
Yes.
But Linkit is still being used in the district.
Yes, it is. We're using Linkit for Form B. Certain grades decided that on Form A did not give them information that they needed.
Okay.
So we are moving to IXL for math because that information, that data will give us the information that we need. But Form B and Form C will still be taken.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Alex.
I have a bunch of questions, as I do every year when this comes around. Ms. Weldon is probably happy that I'm not asking her for once after 5 years of getting these assessment results from her. So let me just get my notes here. A couple of things. Thank you for the presentation. I know it's a lot of data to dive into, a lot of numbers. These are my children's reports, so I'm excited and happy that there are some gains. So I appreciate all the positives that you highlighted. I like that we put this, our introductory letter in a different language, in Spanish. I am curious if you know if the state issues these in another language as well, or did they only get it in Spanish? So that's what, in English. So that's what every family gets these in English only, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that I know you have nothing to do with that, but that's a concern of mine that the state only explains everything in English. Okay, so it wasn't too long ago that we actually saw, for example, I think it was the English, the ELA for the elementary schools, we would have OTES around 25, proficiency, Wanamassa around 80, and Wayside around 65. So for about 2 years now, the fact that OTES has sprung up into the 50s, I think is a huge testament to the fact that we reduced the class size over there. Unfortunately, that's not the case this year. So I'm kind of wondering if we are taking into effect, when you said you're looking at all the demographics, are we looking at the percentage in particular of some of our schools that had completely different lower income students, ELL students, for example, sorry, I'm rambling, OTES might have the largest percentage of ELL. I'm guessing, but I could be wrong. I know it has the largest percentage of lower income. Are we then comparing like how those subgroups do to the other schools, but same category? Like, does that make sense at all? Because, rather than just, looking at OTES versus Wanamassa versus Wayside, their populations are completely different.
Absolutely.
So, I think when we say, and one of the things to worry about, it was like OTES, what was it, ELA, I think, but some of the other schools have since dropped, whereas OTS to me is almost like a success. So how are we balancing, I guess, the particular subgroup populations in how we are addressing the data or assessing the data, if that makes sense?
I'm not sure I'm understanding your question. Are you asking, what are we doing to support the subgroups?
No, more like
Or subgroups at certain schools.
Subgroups at certain schools undoubtedly seem to be performing differently because they're in different percentages. Like, is that something that we're looking at? Like, are they doing something different at this school? Because I don't know.
Can you make your question a little bit more concise? If she's not understanding, if you need to email her, maybe after the meeting at another day, or maybe move on to your next question.
Are we looking at specific subgroups per building and the success and or the non-success and comparing them in between buildings?
Yes, not for this presentation, but we will continue to look at subgroups across the district. One thing I forgot to mention was that we did participate in writing the high impact tutoring grant. And we focused on our subgroups for that particular grant because they were looking at 3rd and 4th graders. So as I went to Ms. Weldon and asked her, our subgroup seem to be performing below all of the other groups.
Mhm.
I mean, all the total population. So we targeted the subgroups for that grant for third and fourth graders, because those were the children who were in kindergarten and first grade when COVID started. So that's why the state chose third and fourth grade, but we took it a little further, and we are really going to focus on those subgroups if we are granted that money.
That's what we
Okay,
get.
okay, thank you. That's helpful. All this data then becomes the New Jersey School Performance Report that goes onto our website, correct?
Part of it.
Mm.
It's part of the performance report.
Okay, so do we have any indication? We have a lot of not mets from the current performance report that's up on our district website right now. Do we have any indication that some of these not mets, which are quite a lot, are going to be knocked off because of some of the gains that we've been doing?
I believe they use different calculations when they determine these, so I couldn't tell you that
Mhm.
right now, because I don't know how the state calculates, those school performance reports.
Okay, and then a couple of minutia questions. The students with disabilities subgroup, how is that broken down? Is that IEPs, 504s, both,
Just IEPs,
just IEPs?
yes.
Okay, and then I think my last question is going to be, you mentioned the grade 9 algebra intervention. So the pilot program, that sounds fantastic. In the presentation, it was pretty blaring about the 8th grade algebra, how they did phenomenal. And then the 9th grade algebra was significantly lower, even compared to the state number. Is there any sort of preparation that's different? Like, are the grade 8, do we know, is their curriculum? Are those kids that took honors 6th and 7th, for example, and then they're in the 8th grade algebra because it's a whole year earlier? I'm just trying to understand how there is such a discrepancy. Do you know if the curriculum or the pathway
Well,
is any
definitely
different?
the pathway, because they are in an accelerated program. So the students who are in this 9th grade algebra are in 9th grade. So they did not have the acceleration that the 8th graders had.
But they have had the exact same curriculum, for
Yes.
example,
Yes.
that the 8th graders doing well had in 7th grade, they would have had it in 8th grade.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Thank you,
And correct me
Dr.
if I'm
Martin.
wrong, because I
Oh,
wasn't
you're
here.
correct. You're correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you. Anybody else have a question?
That was my-
Thank you, Dr. Morgan, for your presentation. We appreciate that. We'll move on to Mr. Hastings for your school business administrators report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank our transportation team, our security officers, and our custodial maintenance staff. As we all remember, 2 weeks ago, Friday, the 29th, we had that terrible rainstorm. Our folks did a lot of hard work on keeping things clean and dry, getting our students out of the buildings, onto the buses, our drivers dealing with a lot of detours and road closures. But at the end of the day, we got all our students home safe, and that was the key. So I'd like to thank them for their hard efforts during that miserable day. I want to remind the board that Monday, the 23rd of October through the 26th is our New Jersey School Boards Association Conference. The agenda for those days is available online. I believe Ms. Boomer provided an email to the board members with links so that you can start looking at what workshops you'd like to go to. There's also various required governance sessions. So if you need to take governance 2, governance 3, governance 4, and you want to get it done down there, that's a great opportunity to do that. Ones you need to take if you don't know. And then finally, we had been asked a question at one of the last meetings about legal costs as they relate to the ethics charges, and what policies the district had in place that could cover those legal costs. We've gone back and forth with our broker and with our insurance carrier to discuss that, and have found that the initial filing was not made with the right carrier by the broker. And we have since corrected that and put that claim in to New Jersey Schools Insurance Group under our errors and omissions policy. They have sent a letter of acknowledgement of receipt of the claim and have accepted the claim. And while they may not cover the entirety of the costs borne by the legal fees associated, they will cover a portion of it, if not all of it. The deductible is $5,000. We have a $100,000 ceiling on that particular policy. So we're happy to report that those costs will be shifted to our carrier.
And going forward, it has not been resolved yet, so the fees could continue to mount
Yes, we'll submit bills as we receive them
as
and,
you receive them.
and submit them for reimbursement.
And Mr. Taylor's, our general counsel's fee is not part of that.
That's correct. The
So
fee
his
is for
fees
the,
are, his fees for any work that he does related to the ethics complaint are separate.
correct.
Thank you.
I just have a
Ms.
few
Hayes.
questions. Thank you for clarifying. I know it was myself and at least a member of the public who asked about the that insurance covering the ethics complaint legal fees. Since there's been a lot discussed in the public and even amongst some members of the school board about how the ethics complaint is going to be costing taxpayers a lot of money. I've even heard 6 figures being tossed out by folks. So in layperson's terms, to simplify it, we have the insurance that covers the legal fees associated with this ethics complaint that is before the State Ethics Commission in its entirety up to $100,000 minus a $5,000 deductible. Is that the easiest way to say this?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
If it's covered, we don't know that yet. We don't know the full coverage.
Correct. So the letter that the district received is a reservation of rights letter from the carrier. The letter basically acknowledges receipt of the complaint of the ethics charge and the request for counsel coverage. It is a legalistic letter, if you will, an insurance company letter. So there are a lot of wheretofores and hereases. So they do mention that they may not cover the full legal cost. And they also mention in there in this sort of template boilerplate letter that they could make a decision based on the particular outcome of the complaint. So again, it's a letter that acknowledges receipt. It indicates that there will be coverage. It just doesn't guarantee, I can't say, yes, everything's covered 100%. It it's going to be subject to their review.
Thank you. Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you for the
So
clarification.
then the deductible is gonna be $5,000. And then the amount previously reported that we spent on Mr. Taylor's fees was roughly $4,500.
So just in rough terms, it was about 15,000 for Ruben and 5,000 for Mr. Taylor.
So then we can anticipate that the 15,000 for Ruben is gonna be reduced to 5,000 with the deductible for now.
It'll be reduced. They will cover, the insurance carrier should cover 10 of the 15. So we'll pay 5
The
and then,
expense for the taxpayer is gonna be $5,000 to Ruben and then additional 5 to Taylor. That's correct
Yes.
assumption?
yes.
And then. What was the total amount of funding that this district lost in FY 23? Is it still $467,000?
Over the past several years, we've lost about $2.5 million.
$2.5 million.
So that's over about 6 years.
And then what is the impact to, do I still have the floor? Thank you. What is the impact to our premiums in the future for the insurance company based on this complaint?
Well, the carriers will look at, and we'll have the broker go out, they'll market our policies, our experience factors to New Jersey Schools Insurance again, to the School Alliance Insurance Fund and other joint insurance funds, JIFs. And they'll look at our experience and then base rates quoted back to us on that experience. So I can't say that this one particular complaint will result in an X% increase, but they look at the overall activity such as workers' compensation, for example. So they would look at the number of claims over a period of 2 to 3 years and say, seems to be trending up, seems to be trending down, and then make a premium decision based on that.
Does that answer your question?
Yes,
All good?
thank you.
Ms. Tortorella?
And then we also have the perhaps unquantified cost of administration's time spent on this as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Does that conclude your report?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to the public comment session for anything on our agenda. Would anyone from the public like to comment on any agenda item at this time? Anybody in the auditorium? Ms. Conway, anybody in the queue?
No, Madam President, there are no commenters.
Okay, thank you very much. Approval of minutes, Mr. McCarthy.
Move to approve items 7.1 and 7.2. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Any discussion of the minutes? Yes?
I do. I hope I'm not getting the time wrong or the date wrong, but there was no mention of Mr. Taylor being in person for the minutes when it listed who was at our meeting, and don't we have to report when he's here in our minutes?
Yes, we typically report attendees, administration.
Whether it's executive session or
Exec
both,
or
I mean,
regular
I don't think he's
meeting.
ever gone to one and not the other, but I
Yes, we
believe,
can make that correction.
yes, if we can add his presence. Thank you. So does that mean we have to do like what we did that other week, approving the minutes?
So I move
As
to approve
amended.
as amended.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can have a second.
Second.
Thank you.
For items 7.1 and 7.2, Dr. Beal,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Mrs. Parlamas.
Yes.
Mrs. Tellerico,
Yes.
Mrs. Tortorella,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein,
Yes.
Mrs. Gilman.
Yes.
Motion carries.
We move to personnel.
Yes,
Ms.
thank you.
Parlamas.
I'd like to make a motion to move items 8.1 through 8.17. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Hastings?
This is approval for all items 8.1 to 8.17. Dr. Beal,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mrs. Parlamas,
Yes.
Mrs. Tellerico,
Yes.
Mrs. Tortorella,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein,
Yes.
Mrs. Gilman.
8.14, recuse myself from wrestling and also would like to wish our retirees the best. Yes to all else.
Thank you. Motion's carried.
Financial management.
9.1, move to approve the use of facilities per the attached. 9.2 to 9.5, discussion.
Second.
This is for approval of our use of facilities 9.1. Dr. Beal,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mrs. Parlamas.
Yes.
Mrs. Tellerico,
Yes.
Mrs. Tortorella,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein,
Yes.
Mrs. Gilman.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll take any comments on 9.2 to 9.5. Thank you.
Yes.
On the athletic training, contract, I had a couple of questions. I think I emailed them prior to this meeting, but I just wanted to go over them. Are they required to provide a certified athletic trainer?
Yes.
Even though it doesn't say that in the contract, it just says a trainer.
Well, it says they'll provide an athletic trainer. Yes. And the understanding is it's a certificated athletic trainer.
Okay. And then, I'm sorry, I don't know if you have the questions in front of you that I
I
thought.
think the marketing, whether or not we put their logo on any of our
Oh, yeah,
products, but
yeah.
just no, we would not.
Okay, but it says that in there though,
Yes, but
that's
basically.
just their boilerplate.
That's
even
their
though-
boilerplate, and basically this agreement provides a substitute athletic trainer at our site, should our trainer not be available for any particular reason.
Okay, so they
This is
can't,
something we spent probably less than $1,000 on last year.
that was gonna be my next question, was how often do we use them?
Yeah, I believe it was 800 and some dollars we spent last year.
Okay. And I guess my third question is, there's no other local company that we could use rather than a national company? I know we only use them for $800, so you're saying,
Right.
but there are like 30 athletic training companies in, in a three town radius. I'm just wondering.
Right, so past experience I've had has been difficult. There may be a number of facilities available or organizations that could provide that, but it's very difficult to get a trainer sort of on the spot with a short notice to say, oh, our trainer is sick or has an engagement on a
Okay.
particular date that's a week away, and to get someone to come for a fee that's not,
Okay.
always what they want.
So
So-
we've been successful with the company that we use.
Yes, the athletic directors indicated we'd had good success with them, and he's happy with their performance.
Okay.
Great.
Any other questions? Okay. We'll
On
move
just that
to
9.2?
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, any other questions on just 9.2 or?
No, 9.2 to 9.5.
Do we need to go, no, the comprehensive maintenance plan? I was wondering if we could go over that a little bit.
Sure, so the it's sort of a combined report. It's called the M1 and Comprehensive Maintenance Plan, or CMP. They sort of go hand in hand. They're required for us to file each year with the state. The M1 is the state sort of looks at replacement cost of facilities as a boilerplate again. They assign $143 per square foot in determining that replacement cost. And then they look at 0.2% in terms of 0.2% of the value in terms of what the district should be spending on maintenance for the facility. So the initial page there on the M1 shows those calculations, and we're significantly above what our projected amount is, as we should be, given that low $143 in terms of what we're projecting for the next year. The second part of the M1 details basically over a 10-year span what the district has spent in actual dollars through 8 years, budgeted dollars for the current year, and estimated dollars for next year. So that's just sort of a running 10-year total of what the district plans to spend or has spent on maintenance for those. The comprehensive maintenance plan, again, is a document that basically just lists the various activities that the district will be providing to the buildings in terms of routine maintenance. So it's sort of a catch-all, much like our long-range facility plan, where we're just sort of putting everything in there that we do as ongoing maintenance.
Were we not required to put in this building at all? Like if they ask for school facilities, they only want the school buildings. They don't need district buildings. Is that correct?
Yes, so we put in the school buildings for that particular plan. There is an associated form. It's a health and safety form that you may have seen in the past that's due around the same time, but doesn't require board approval. And that is a walkthrough sheet of about 100 items that we do at each location, including this building, in terms of routine maintenance, certificates, boiler inspections, and various other things that go in there.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Thank you, Mr. Hastings, for that explanation. No further discussion. Okay, we'll move to instruction, education, and student activities. Dr. Beal.
Any discussion regarding 10.1? Okay.
Noted. We'll move to policy.
This is the first presentation of items 11.1 and 11.2. Looking for discussion to any members of the board. Ask that any questions regarding particular policies are pointed towards the administration.
Yes.
I have questions about policy 4161, examination for cause. Because there's a different update than what we originally have, so it was updated, correct? And my questions are. There's certain things on here that I just don't quite understand why it was taken out. So the original one says that the superintendent would make the decision and the board would approve or not approve on their recommendation. That's been taken out, and this, from my understanding, reads that the board makes the decision now, and that the board's providing the support staff member with the written statement of the reasons, but it doesn't say anything on here of who would give that recommendation to the board. Do you know what I mean? Because that was in the original, but it's not in the updated one. It just basically has everything on here as the board is making the decisions, what appropriate testing and so forth. And the only thing in here about the superintendent is that the lab results are given to the superintendent, but it doesn't say anything else about how the superintendent is involved. And that to me would be important, because we would never interact with the staff to know if they needed an exam for cause.
I have similar issues, concerns as well.
And the other question I have is about the enforcement and the time frame of the enforcement, because I don't see on here when this would be enforced, and obviously the board meetings are twice a month. So if there was a staff person that was under the influence and needed an examination for cause, how would that be enforced if the board has to approve it?
I'm sorry, I'm just pulling it up.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So in terms of someone who's suspected of being under the influence of something, that is addressed immediately. If that person displays those particular signs or symptoms of being under the influence, they would be reported to the nurse and then sent out for assessment. The update from Strauss Esme is based on a change in case law. So as you know, Strauss Esme sends out these alerts to us. A lot of the changes that they give us in these alerts are based on changes in the actual law that's passed by the legislature, or based on recent case law where decisions in court have required them to update or change the policies in terms of how they were previously written. So this is one of those policies where they're basing the changes recommended on case law.
Do you know which case law that is?
I do not believe they indicated, but we could find out for you if need be.
And in what jurisdiction, if you don't mind? If that's something you're looking up, I mean.
Because, you know, they do quote the pursuant to the New Jersey State Law 18A 16.2, which is about substance use. But my question is just, this doesn't, I'm just wondering why they took out the part about the superintendent, because how would we know? That's
Right.
my point.
Right, so we can reach out to Strauss tomorrow and get that answer for you, and then we can send that to the full board.
Thank you. Okay. Yes,
I'm curious, have we spoken to the union on the 4161, the staff examination for cause, and the similar item of a different number that's in front of us for teacher examination for cause? I'm just echoing Grace's comments. The way it reads now is that the 9 of us could order somebody to have a mental or drug test. And I am no expert on either of that. So I don't really understand the
Right, so
reasoning.
there's,
So I'm wondering if the union has weighed in or if we have talked with them at all.
No, we have not.
right, and I think there's 2 different things, and maybe they need clarification.
Mhm.
One is an examination for cause, which would be a very formal process where the superintendent would make that recommendation on an employee and the board would vote to approve sending that employee for an examination with a professional. As was previously mentioned, if someone is in the district and is acting in a peculiar way, that would be addressed immediately by the principal and the folks on that, at that particular building. So that's just a little.
So the board is not making that determination.
The board is not making the determination necessarily on sending it someone who's acting in a peculiar way, because that needs to be addressed immediately. If a case went down a particular route and we superintendent determined that we needed to send someone for an evaluation, that would be based on board approval.
Okay, so if we get clarification from you, does that mean this is something that we're going to vote on next week, or is it possible to discuss whatever information you tell us next week and then vote on it the week after?
I would suggest that if we can get clarification for you tomorrow, that we vote on it at the next meeting, but that's
Yes.
the board's discretion.
I think we will. Mr. McCarthy, any other discussion of anything else you want to say about policy?
No, thank you.
Okay. So that was our first reading of these. Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
yes.
Also, my other question is about the specific tests. So according to this, the board's making that decision. And that's my question of why we would be doing that.
Okay, we'll
Just for
get,
clarification for those three questions. Thank you.
I only see us, making those recommendations based on the administration,
It does not-
their recommendation to us. We would never make those decisions on our own without recommendation from the administration. But if you get the clarification, I would appreciate that. Thank you. We'll move to old business. Is there any old business?
Wait, I'm sorry, we have a whole nother section of policies.
We concluded that.
We didn't do 11.2.
I believe Mr. McCarthy did.
I did present both 11.1 and 11.2 for discussion.
Okay,
Old business. Is there any old business, Mr. McCarthy?
I believe we would like to discuss whether, you can see now that our attorney is not currently present at the meeting. I believe there's a desire amongst the board to discuss whether or not we would like to have our board attorney present at all meetings, choose that he's only present upon request, he or she, whoever they may be, or that they are only present for a certain type of meeting. So I would like to just bring that topic up for discussion on the floor.
Thank you for bringing that up. It was my recommendation that he be present for our regular sessions or as needed. Let's hear some other opinions. If anybody has any other opinions about that.
I personally don't see a reason to have him there unless we know that a specific event is coming up.
Okay,
I feel it should be as needed.
as needed. Any other? Yes.
The regular meetings.
The
and then
regular
as needed.
meetings.
So it's not subjective as to who wants him here and who doesn't. Make it clear across the board at the
A
beginning.
specific meeting, okay?
No, regular and
Yes.
then as needed.
Regular and as needed, as I
needed.
stated.
What you
Thank you.
said, yes.
I would be comfortable with that, although I think he should be here for every meeting.
Mr. Weinstein, or I'm sorry, Mr. McCarthy?
What is, sorry to put you on the spot, Mr. Hastings, what is, Mr. Taylor's rate hourly?
175.
175.
175.
You're confident in that answer?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I was gonna say about 170.
About 170?
Five.
Add that.
Yeah, so just based on looking to be a good steward of the taxpayer dollar, I would prefer that it was as needed, and not even required standard for the regular sessions. That would be my preference.
I agree. As needed.
Any other, but yes?
I also agree with regular and as needed.
Anybody else want to weigh in on it? Do we-
I'm confused. Is this a vote or what?
I don't know, maybe we should just kind of take an informal poll for now and see what happens at our next meeting. I've requested that he come to our regular session next week. So let's just do an informal poll for now. Those in favor of having him attend our regular sessions and as needed, raise your hand. And those who would prefer to have him come as needed?
Well, we're missing a member.
4-4.
4-4. Okay, that's why we're polling. So we'll wait and when we have our full board here, but Mr. Taylor will be at next week's meeting. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Mr. McCarthy. Any other old business? Yes.
Just out of curiosity.
Oh, yes.
So whose decision is it? Whose decision ultimately is it to have him at the meeting, this next meeting? Like how does that work?
I
That,
have invited him to our next session.
okay,
And we usually discuss that at our agenda session planning. But that's why I wanted input from the rest of the board
So.
to see how, yes,
But to clarify, per our policy, doesn't our policy state that the president or the superintendent could invite the the attorney to any of our meetings?
yes.
Yeah,
it
okay.
does. That's why I invited him. Question? Yes.
Well, I mean, I'm in favor of as needed, but hypothetically, a president, whether it's you or someone else, doesn't feel the attorney needs to be there at a meeting, but someone else does. How would we handle that? We have to have a mechanism for any board member to be able to request it, I think. If we end up going with as needed.
You think we should have a mechanism for
I
any?
think we
board-
have to, if we
Absolutely.
ultimately go with as needed.
Yes.
I think,
But I can't imagine though, if you came to me and said, I really think we should have the attorney at our next meeting, that the president would say no. But then again, that's me. As you said, that's not always going to be me.
Well, that was
Ms. Parlava.
kind of like what I was gonna say. In the past, that's how we've handled it.
okay,
If someone felt the need that the attorney should be
Just
there,
make the request.
they spoke to the
request to the president,
superintendent
then that,
and or president, and
and that's in
president.
policy already, Ms. Ace, you said?
Yes.
It's in policy that it's only the president and the superintendent, but I mean, I've probably made the request 5 times over the last 3 years to have an attorney present, and the presiding president has told me no. So that's just interesting that we're going to change course right now, but I
Mr.
welcome.
Weinstein?
I guess the thing that I'm trying to understand is if let's pretend we go down this road and we say, something's as needed. Right, so how's it, so the as needed part that gets,
Is that too
like right now, if
nebulous?
he was sitting at this meeting and we weren't having this discussion, it would have been a waste of everybody's time from being here. Right, I mean, and most of the things that we're talking about do not require a referee. So that's
True.
that's the thing that. And least the referee part, the least volatile part of the stuff is when we're actually having regular sessions. Right, I mean, it's usually just straight votes and we're in and out, so I don't understand I understand what people are saying about having somebody at a regular meeting, but. Most of the things that are more discussion oriented happen in these kind of sessions, they don't happen in the regular meeting, the regular meeting is. Pretty up and down straight votes, a nice presentation by somebody in the community, nice awards that were given out, and then the meeting's done. So I'm not. Maybe could be my lack of experience on the board who doesn't understand it, but I'm willing to listen to what everybody's saying.
I can understand that. Just my feeling is based on his actions for the time that he's been here, he's been invaluable in directing us. So we'll bring that up again when we have a full board, and well, although next week is the regular and I've invited him, so maybe 2 meetings down the road to discuss further, which will be in November. New business,
I'm sorry, I had old.
yes?
At the last meeting, I brought up the Wi-Fi at TOIS. And I probably should have amended it after seeing our high school representatives nodding their head that we can't, that I was quote unquote complaining about the lack of Wi-Fi at the middle school, that the high school also has its own problem. But even today, my child's sporting event was transferred from home to outside to another neighboring district, and the kids were told, text your parents the update. Kids cannot text out of our middle school. And from what I'm understanding, they cannot text out of our high school. And I really wish that we could agree to maybe look into how easy it is. And I know you had looked into, like, is there an expense, or if we can get an update on that, maybe the next meeting. From what I have heard in talking to school board members at other districts, it's not really a matter of, can we buy more Wi-Fi routers and stuff like that? It's the district allowing access. We pay a lot of money for all the Wi-Fi in these buildings. And from what I have been told, it is if we're having parent night, for example, it should have been super easy at the middle school to just say, parents, you will have Wi-Fi access to your child's Genesis once you walk in the building by typing in TOIS 2023 or something like that. I don't believe that we need to buy more equipment, for example. And I'm wondering if we could get like a solid answer maybe from IT, maybe at the next meeting. And nobody wants kids to sit there playing video games during school. That is absolutely not what I'm suggesting. But that's what I wanted to bring forward. Is that am I asking a question, I guess? Superintendent Weldon, is that something that we can get like an answer on, or are we all making a board decision that we do not want kids to have any Wi-Fi or any adult who's not a teacher access when they walk in our buildings?
No, I mean, we looked into why the service is not strong and what it would take to improve the service. I think you're asking, well, we looked into, I think maybe now tonight you're asking a little bit of a different question, but.
Yeah, so really there's probably more than two, but two options come to mind. One is boosting the signal for 5G for cell phone service in the building so that people can access their carrier through the signal. That's a very expensive proposition. So you get into active and passive systems, but either way, it's a very costly process. The second solution that could come to mind or does come to mind is a guest network for our Wi-Fi. So that would be something we'd have to discuss with IT. And I think the issue there is that if you were going to give out our Wi-Fi access, you'd want to limit it to a guest network for those folks so that they're not on our active, I'll call it everyday network, and we're not subjecting ourselves to cyber threats and cyber attacks and those sorts of things. So we could look at that as an option. But again, that would take a little bit of time, and I'd have to discuss that further along with the superintendent, with our IT folks, to see what that entails. And, is that a programming thing that our system can handle in terms of the additional load, or is it, equipment or some combination thereof?
And then what does that open up? Does that open us up to any security risks? I think we'd have to go through that as
Cyber
well
attack.
and go through that with our insurance.
So in terms of setting up a guest network, you'd want it separate from our system. So it's isolated.
It's going to be costly.
That makes sense.
All right, we're moving to new business.
We can look into that
Yep.
second option and report back when we have more information.
Right.
Thank you.
Any new business? Yes.
Two things. It is Hispanic Heritage Month, so I did want to acknowledge to our Latino students and staff, or at least acknowledge Hispanic Heritage Month. It ends in a couple of days. And also, in response to what's been going on in Israel, I was looking for a quick and easy access to the counseling department. Personally, I was looking on my phone this week. We used to have when the COVID dashboard was up, it was a little more easy. You could just, click COVID dashboard and then mental health resources would come up. I mean, I'm on the school board and it took me 5 minutes to go through. I was like, is it under parents? No. Is it under schools? Like it took me a long time to find mental health resources. So, and then it got me thinking, well, if I had a kid who was really in a crisis, how do I call the 5th grade counselor or the high school counselor? And it took me quite a while to find that school counseling page. I am wondering if there is an appetite to perhaps put something like that, a little like a button or something on the main page to make it a little more easy. Not just for me as a parent, but I mean, I don't know, do kids go on it too, but.
So we are working on a communication out to families to package all of our mental health services. We're working on that right now, actually. Once we have that, we can look for a better place on our website to put it. But just so everyone knows, if you ever are in the middle of a crisis with your child, you should call the school, the main number of the school, and just explain that you need help, and you will be directed immediately to a counselor to assist you. We shouldn't wait or spend time lost on the web. We absolutely will take a call and direct any parent or any student in need or in crisis to support and to help. But we're already working on what you're suggesting. So yes, we will
It's
continue
fantastic. Okay.
get that going.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weldon. We're going to move to public comment. Would anyone from the public like to comment on any item at this time? Yes. Just give us your name, please, and address.
Dave Stonecker, 6 Derby Lane, Wayside. I have a question regarding the board docs website for like the agendas. The day it's released is the Monday morning before the Tuesday meeting, correct? How often is it updated between that time and the meeting?
It's,
A lot of times,
it
correct?
depends. It depends on the week. It depends on how
So
long.
the reason I was asking is because usually, I'll look at the agenda Monday morning, try to figure out what you guys are gonna be talking about. Come up with a question here too, but then like, you'll have like personnel won't have like whichever employees' names that you're talking about or whatever, that's not on there, but then by the time I come to the meeting, it's up there, which is fine.
I can just tell you,
Yeah, just
personnel
wondering.
is moved to the public right around 2 p.m. on Tuesdays.
Okay.
Around 2 p.m. I think today was 2:07.
Gotcha. I was just wondering if the board members get more information before the public does.
They do. They get
Cause I
the
figure you guys
agenda.
have to figure out what you're gonna vote on and all that before.
You're right, Mr. Donica, but again, today we got our updates at about 2:30.
Okay,
So, any new personnel that might have been added or a document, for example, that our business administrator wanted to share with
Mhm.
us.
yeah, cause a lot of stuff is just like when you look at it. Monday morning, it just says, there's not that much information, but then when I come to the meeting, it's like, boom, everything's there, but I'm working on all the time till I get here to look. I was just wondering if you guys get the information before, so we're all in the same boat at the same time.
We really are. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, we get a lot.
You get a lot.
They get their information, they get the agenda on Friday.
Okay,
And then really, I believe it's midnight, Sunday into Monday. It goes live to the
Okay.
public, everything except personnel.
gotcha.
Personnel goes live around 2 p.m. on Tuesdays.
Okay,
And then the only other things we add are ones that are very timely.
okay,
So if we don't have a meeting for a long time, we might try, if something's timely, a resignation, a retirement, we have to fill that position. We would try to get that item on the agenda
okay.
Monday or Tuesday if we get.
Yeah, I'm not
That's
accusing it. I
fine.
was just wondering, cause
Yeah,
I
That's
just,
the process.
like, it
Yeah.
just changes a lot.
It
I've
does.
been noticing, the
changes.
more I come, the more I'm looking at it, it's like, wait, that wasn't on there this morning, but it was on there now. It's just, that's all.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
question. Thank you very much. I'm sure other people have the same question. Ms. Conway, is there anyone in the queue?
Yes, Madam President, Sandy Miller,
Go ahead, Sandy.
please go ahead.
Hi, sorry, I couldn't find the unmute. Hi, Sandy Miller, 7 Horicon Drive in Ocean. I just had a question regarding 8.12. about the multi-sensory reading program, which I think sounds like a great idea. I just didn't know, is that an after-school thing, like kind of like one of the Spartan programs? I don't know if you discussed that, I might have missed it. I don't know, I was listening, but I might have missed it. I just didn't know if you could expand exactly what that is. Is it for like all grade levels, like K to 4, or is it in class, like in the schools, or like during the day of like a regular push-in service, like kind of like one of the coaches? Or whatever, any information would be great. I think it's a wonderful program that you're putting in there.
Sure. This is at the high school, outside the school day.
Oh, okay, great. So it's a high school. I totally, like, I thought that's great. Thanks for clarifying that. Okay, so it's at the high school. Okay. Thank you.
Is that good? Thank you, Sandy. Anyone else, Ms. Conway?
No, Madam President, there are no more commenters.
Okay, thank you very much. Then if someone will, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, okay, thanks, everybody. Meeting adjourned.